Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil Anbiya wal Mursaleen. Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathiran kathira. From Mabadu, my brothers and sisters, we continue with our story of the events leading to the Battle of Badr. Now, Abu Sufyan, radiallahu anhu, of course, in those days he was not a Muslim yet, and he was the most bitter enemy of Rasulullah. He was a great leader and he was very smart. So he realized that there is danger in passing too close to Medina. So he took a different route for his caravan, and he went closer to the sea. So he must have gone, through where now Jeddah is. And but while he was doing that, he also wanted to make sure that he would be able to get help if he needed help. If he got attacked, then he wanted to make sure that there would be the Quraysh would be able to help him. So what he did was he hired Damdam bin Amr al-Ghifari to convey a message asking for help from the Quraysh. Now, Damdam bin Amr must have been quite an actor and a very resourceful character. So he rode his camel, he rode very fast. And just to think about that, dromedaries, which are the camels that the Arabs used to use, single hump camels, much smaller than the Bactrian camels of Central Asia with two humps, much smaller also than Indian camels that we have in Rajasthan, but very fast. The dromedary can literally run faster than a racehorse and maintain that much longer than a racehorse. So they have enormous capacity to endure hardship, enormous stamina, enormous capacity, especially to endure thirst, which was a big thing in the Arabian Peninsula, because water was in very short supply. So he hired this man. Abu Sufyan hired this man. So this guy, he rode his camel very fast, reached Makkah in a frenzy, and then see his drama. He didn't just walk into the majlis of the Quraysh and say, "Excuse me, I think we have some trouble. Abu Sufyan's caravan might be in trouble." He didn't do all that. He went straight to the Kaaba. In front of the Kaaba. And the Kaaba was important not only because of its religious significance, but because that was the center of town. So all the activity in Makkah would happen around the Kaaba. The market of Makkah was around the Kaaba, quite literally until even, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the late 50s or even the early 60s, there were shops between Safa and Marwa, and the people doing sa'i would walk between the shops. So there was this street between Safa and Marwa with shops on either side, and people would do sa'i when they did Umrah, walking between the shops up and down that street. So this whole place was hugely active, and you had people making tawaf of the Kaaba, you had people, your people in the shops and all that. So he went to the place where he would get maximum exposure, maximum publicity, maximum visibility. So in the middle of that, he went there. Then what he did was he leaped off his camel. He took off the saddle, he turned it upside down, he slashed the nose and the ears of the camel. So the camel was bleeding and his saddle was upside down. And then he also tore his own clothes. He tore his shirt from front and back, and obviously he probably would have had blood stains of the camel's blood on himself. And he started screaming and he said, "Oh Quraysh, your merchandise, all your goods and so on, they are on the caravan of Abu Sufyan, and they are about to be ambushed by Muhammad ﷺ and his companions. And I came from there, and I don't even know, maybe they're all dead." maybe the caravan is gone, or it has been looted and so on. And so immediately, we need you urgently. Now, he made such a hue and cry, he made such a enormous fuss. I mean, he must have been quite an actor. That the news was, the response was instantaneous. The people of Quraysh, they were stunned by this, completely unexpected. They did not expect that Muhammad ﷺ would have the courage to attack them or attack their caravan. And they were, they were absolutely astounded. They never expected that to happen. And so they called the people, and quickly everybody came. All of their leaders joined them except Abu Lahab. And Abu Lahab instead designated, he sent one man who owed him some money. So he said to the man, go and fight, and your debt is, if you survive, your debt is paid off. Now, interesting thing, you might say, well, why did Abu Lahab not go? Right? Why did he not? Because he was a number one enemy of Rasulullah ﷺ. The only man about whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed Quran, promising punishment for him. So, but why didn't he go? And he didn't go because he believed that if he fought Rasulullah ﷺ face to face, that he would be killed in that battle. If he went to battle against Muhammad ﷺ, he would be killed. He completely and totally believed that. It's very strange if you think about it, that these people, the Quraysh and the non-Muslim, the idolatrous Arabs of Makkah, they believed every single thing that Muhammad ﷺ told them, without exception. Whatever he told them, they believed, except La ilaha illallah. When he told them, do not worship idols, worship your Creator, worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to whom is your return, this they didn't believe. But they believed everything else. All his prophecies, whatever he said, they believed, and they believed it to the extent that, I mean, imagine, this is Abu Lahab, in those days, not going to battle along with your tribe when the whole tribe was going was a very serious matter. It was a matter which was a huge prestige matter. You could literally lose your leadership as a result of that. But he was so terrified of dying that he said, I can't go. Why can't you go? Because Muhammad ﷺ said this. Because if I fight him, I'm going to die. And if you believe him, then how come you don't believe the real message which he brought? This is what hatred does to us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this in the Quran as well. This is what hatred does to us. Hatred makes us deny the truth even when the truth is clearly evident to us. But hatred will not allow us to accept the truth as truth. May Allah save us from hatred. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always enable us to see the truth and to accept it, and to see the falsehood and to stay away from it. Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'ah wa arina al-batila batilan warzuqna ijtinabah. Oh Allah, show us the truth as truth and enable us to follow that, and show us the batil and the falsehood as falsehood, and enable us to stay away from it and protect us from it. Ameen Ya Rab. So the Quraysh now, they gathered all those people, and they also mobilized some other Arab tribes to join them. So totally it was all the clans of Quraysh who were aligned with them, and who were their allies. They gave their consent, except Banu Adi. They didn't come into that. They didn't join this army. There was they finally, the throng, the whole bunch of them, there were 1,300 soldiers, including 100 horsemen and 600 soldiers in full armor, with a large number of camels. Now, again, those of you who are interested in military history and who read something about those times, I'm talking about the 7th century and even later, you will be surprised at these small numbers, right? For example, in the 13th century, when Genghis Khan was in the ascendance, one Tuman of the Mongols was 10,000 soldiers. It was 10,000 horsemen armed with their double-curved bows and a sword, right? And they were all of them armored. They would wear a silk shirt inside, because if an arrow penetrated, then the silk came out. Cotton left pieces inside, which then became septic, so the soldier would die. So they wore a silk shirt inside, and then on that they used to wear Chinese armor, which was made of pieces of metal linked together, about this size, the size of my two fingers, pieces of metal all linked together, which gave them a huge amount of freedom of movement, unlike what would have happened if they had been wearing armor like the European knights, which was plate armor, which is plate iron or plate steel, which was enormously heavy and completely restricted movement to a great extent. Not completely, but to a great extent. But the Chinese armor was very light, and it was very effective, and it gave them almost total freedom of movement. So we're talking here about armored soldiers on horseback, double-curved bows and swords, and a tumar, which was one unit of the army, was 10,000 soldiers. So we are talking about huge numbers of soldiers. If you go to the Roman legions, a legion was roughly between 4,000 to 5,000 soldiers. So this is big numbers. But here, as I told you, the Arabs were not campaigners. They were not people who were professional soldiers. They fought because when they needed to fight, they fought, and so their numbers were very small. At the most, they raided each other, and you don't need a huge army to raid another tribe. So here we have 1,300 soldiers, which is still more than 3 times the number of Sahaba, the number of people with Rasulullah, because that's only 300, and this is 1,300, about 4 times, which included 100 horsemen and 600 soldiers in full armor. The rest of them were not armored, or they had partial armor. And of course, they had a large number of camels and food supplies, and all the wherewithal, tents and whatnot. Now, Suraka bin, not Suraka bin, they were afraid, as they were leaving, they were afraid of the Banu Bakr. Now, this was a tribe with whom the Quraysh had some long-standing enmity, and so they were afraid that the Banu Bakr might attack them from the rear, so they had a rear guard to take care of that. At that time, Shaitan, Iblis, appeared to them in the guise of Suraka bin Malik, bin Jusham al-Mudlaji, who was the chief of Bani Kinana, and he said to them, I guarantee that no harm will come to you from behind. He said, I will take care of your problems from, if anybody attacks you from behind, and I am with you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes this tactic of shaitan, and so beautifully Allah describes this, and it's a great warning for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِذْ زَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ وَإِذْ زَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَعْمَالَهُمْ وَقَالَ لَا غَالِبَ لَكُمُ الْيَوْمَ مِنَ النَّاسِ وَإِنِّي جَارٌ لَكُمْ فَلَمَّا تَرَاءَتِ الْفِئَتَانِ نَكَصَ عَلَى عَقِبَيْهِ وَقَالَ إِنِّي بَرِيءٌ مِّنكُمْ إِنِّي أَرَى مَا لَا تَرَوْنَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهَ وَاللَّهُ شَدِيدُ الْعِقَابِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and remember when shaitan made their evil deeds seem fair to them, made their evil deeds look good to them, and said, no one of mankind can overcome you on this day. That is the battle of Badr, and verily I am your neighbor, I am your friend for each and every help. But when the two forces came in sight of each other, he ran away, and he said, verily I have nothing to do with you. Verily I see what you do not see. Verily I fear Allah, for Allah is severe in punishment. And this is in Surah Al-Anfal, ayah 48. Surah Al-Anfal has detailed descriptions of the Battle of Badr, and Surah Al-Imran has of Battle of Uhud. Now here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring, and I'm sort of going ahead of myself a little bit, which is on the day of Badr, when the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Malaika, Shaitan saw them. Whereas the Quraysh couldn't see them, obviously, the men couldn't see them. But Shaitan saw them, and as soon as he saw them, he ran away. And he said, Allah is severe in punishment. I think again here is the reason I mentioned this ayat here is once again, this is a case of knowingly denying the truth. Iblis's crime is not just in denying the truth, but in denying the truth with knowledge. He was not mistaken, right? He was not mistaken. He did not disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because he did not realize who Allah is. He knew everything. Despite that, he disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he insisted on the disobedience. He said, give me time. Anzirni ila yawma yub'asun. He said, give me time until the day when you resurrect the people. Now this is the kind of attitude which is so destructive and disastrous. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from ourselves and from having that kind of attitude. So now this army of the Quraysh moved swiftly northward to Badr, and on the way they received another message from Abu Sufyan because he, by then he had escaped, asking them to go back home because the caravan had escaped the Muslims. So he was able to, Abu Sufyan was able to escape and go away, whereas he sent a message saying, no need now to come, you also go back home. Now when they got the message, as I told you, the Arabs were not professional soldiers like the Romans and the Persians. So as far as they were concerned, well, we are going out to raid, now there is no need, so go back home. No point in risking life and limb. But Abu Jahl, who was the sort of de facto leader of the army, general of the army, he said no. He insisted that they should go to Badr and stay there, and he said we will stay there 3 nights and we will make festivities and we will dance and we will beat our drums and so on, because he said Badr also was a seasonal market, so this was a time when people would be coming. So he said we are going to go stay there and do all this, and so we want to make sure that people know that the Quraysh are still powerful, that they still have the upper hand, and that nothing else has changed that. Right? Now Banu Zahra, one of the tribes who were with them, acting on the advice of one of the leaders, Al-Akhnas bin Shuraiq, they said, no, we are not with this and we are going back. Now there is no need to fight, we are not going to Badr. So they left, and they had 300 soldiers, they left and went. Now after whatever happened in Badr, which we will see inshallah, Al-Akhnas bin Shuraiq became what the Arabs used to call the well-rubbed palm tree. They used to touch trees for barakah. He became the most reliable advisor of the Banu Zahra, who literally blindly obeyed him in all matters. They said, well, here's a man who's wise and we are not going to argue with him about anything. So they blindly obeyed him. They took 300 soldiers. Again, this also shows how the Arabs, their military endeavors, how they were organized, where people followed their own tribal leaders. Even though there was, in this case, Abu Jahl was the overall commander, but he had no authority over the individual leaders. So if an individual tribe wanted to leave, the tribal leader wanted to leave, he took his tribe and he went, and there was nothing that the commanding officer could do. So you could literally be left without any people, just by yourself and your immediate followers in a battle. Not a happy situation to be in. Now Banu Hashim also were inclined to break away, but Abu Jahl threatened them and so on and so forth, so they stopped, they didn't go. So the army now from 1300, it became down to 1000, and they came to Badr and they camped. There was a place called Al-Udwatul Quswa. There was a sand dune, so they camped behind this sand dune. Rasulullah ﷺ scouts reported to him that an encounter with the Makkans was inescapable, and that he would have to decide how to respond to it. So Rasulullah decided to stop in Badr at a particular place, and he ordered this. One of the Sahaba, Habab ibn al-Mundir radiallahu anhu, he asked Rasulullah, he said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is this wahi from Allah that we are ordered to stop here and not to go ahead? Or is this a matter of opinion and battle tactics? So Rasulullah said, this is not wahi, this is a matter of opinion and battle tactics. So Habab ibn al-Mundir, he said, then with your permission, I have another opinion. Rasulullah said, say, what is it? He said, I believe that we should go ahead to the well. Badr had some wells. He said, I believe that we should go ahead to the well that is nearest to the army of the Quraysh and stop there, and then we should block up the other wells. Right? So now we have a well which is behind us. We build a cistern, we fill it with water so we can fight with water, and they won't have water because we will block up the other wells and we have one well with water. So Rasulullah liked his advice, he thought it's a good advice, he accepted it, and he ordered that they should be done. Now Rasulullah, this is one of the, interestingly, this is one of the strongest indicators of the style of leadership of Rasulullah, which was very collaborative and inclusive, and focused entirely on the success of his mission. He never allowed his ego or any sense of superiority to come in the way of listening to his companions. He encouraged dialogue and dissent, and that is why he was able to get the best out of such a diverse group of people, which would have had, have had any other leader literally running for cover. I mean, imagine leading a group of people who practically didn't agree on anything. A very diverse group of people coming from a culture of vendettas and revenge and all kinds of things, and egos on the tip of their noses. But Rasulullah was able to put them all together and make them into this one cohesive force. So he did this by respect. He respected them, and he showed that respect by giving them time and listening to them with total concentration. But anyone, if he was walking and if there was someone walking by his side and the person spoke, Rasulullah would stop, he would completely turn around, he would look at the person, eye contact, and he would listen to him until he finished. He never spoke to somebody over his shoulder, he never spoke to somebody in passing. If he was in a hurry, then he would tell the person, come at this time, I will talk to you. But if he was talking to somebody, he gave them their full and complete attention. And that's why many Sahaba, they felt that, they felt very special. They felt that, oh, Rasulullah loves me more than anybody else because he gives me so much attention. He looks at me directly when he speaks. There's a very interesting story about Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhu. It's an amusing story, but it illustrates the power of respecting people and giving them the respect in building relationships and building teams. Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhu says that one day, he said, I really felt that Rasulullah loves me more than anybody else, because he would always look at me directly and speak to me and so on. Of course, he didn't realize that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did that with everybody. Anyway, so he thought this. So he said, I decided to ask Rasulullah. But he didn't want to ask him too directly because, it's like devastating if he says no. So he didn't want to say, for example, Ya Rasulullah, do you love me more than anybody else? So he didn't say that. Instead, he asked him, he said, Ya Rasulullah, who do you love the most? So Rasulullah said, Aisha. Yeah, our mother Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha. He said, Aisha. He said, no, Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, I mean, I don't mean among the women, I don't mean your wives and so on. He said, among the men, who do you love the most? Rasulullah said, the father of Aisha, which is Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. So Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhu says, well, I decided to not to ask any more questions because it's, he didn't want to get himself into an embarrassing situation. But this shows us how Rasulullah respected people, and he build this uh, atmosphere of trust. Now that is why his companions did not hesitate to give their opinions. Sadly, even today, we see team members withholding key information for fear of offending the leader because if they have to say something that is contrary to the leader's opinion, they are afraid that this will offend the leader, so they don't say it. The result is that sometimes or many times the team fails to achieve the task because key information is held back. Now, allowing dissent is not only essential to success because it forces us to look at the other side of the coin, which is critical to the achievement of our goals, but it's a sign of the supreme confidence of the leader. Only a leader who is completely confident about himself or herself and their leadership can be comfortable about having their followers disagree with them on any matter. Leaders who lack confidence, they feel threatened by dissent and do their best to kill it and eliminate those who disagree with them. They realize their mistake too late when the entire mission fails. We have too many examples of this in our history, and even more painfully today as we speak. That's why I say if only we can learn from the seerah of Rasulullah. It is such a beautiful example that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave, if only we learn. The night of the battle, Rasulullah saw a dream in which he saw the army of the Quraysh much smaller than it really was. Next morning, there was rain. Now, very interestingly, the rain fell in the same area, but on the Muslims, it was a very light kind of shower which made the earth firm, it washed them, it refreshed them. They had drinking water, fresh water in their cistern. But on the Quraysh, the rain was very hard. They had a heavy shower which made the whole ground muddy and difficult to move, and it damaged their goods and so on and so forth. So this is one of the many miracles that happened in Badr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about this, إِذْ يُغَشِّيكُمُ النُّعَاسَ أَمَنَةً مِّنْهُ وَيُنَزِّلُ عَلَيْكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً لِيُطَهِّرَكُم بِهِ وَيُذْهِبَ عَنكُم رِجْزَ الشَّيْطَانِ وَلِيَرْبِطَ عَلَى قُلُوبِكُم وَيُثَبِّتَ بِهِ الْأَقْدَامِ. Allah said, remember when He, Jalla Jalaluhu, covered you with a slumber, He made you, He gave you sleep which took away your tiredness, covered you with a slumber as a security from Him. This was the mercy of Allah. And He caused rainwater to descend on you from the sky to clean you thereby and to remove from you the rijs, the whisperings and the threats of shaitan, and to strengthen your hearts and to make your feet firm thereby. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to the Muslims and reminding them that this was His special mercy because of which they were able to, that Allah gave it to them as His special mercy. Rasulullah also held a emergency meeting to review the ongoing situation and to exchange viewpoints with the army leaders. Some Muslims feared the encounter, obviously, because this army was 3 times their size, and they were much better armed and armored than the Muslims. So some of them, their courage began to waver. Now, in this regard, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what He did, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كما أخرجك ربك من بيتك بالحق وإن فريقا من المؤمنين لكارهون يجادلونك في الحق بعدما تبين كأنما يساقون إلى الموت وهم ينظرون. Allah said, as your Rabb caused you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to go out from your home with the truth, and verily a party among the believers disliked it, disputing with you concerning the truth after it was made manifest, as if they were being driven to death while they were looking at it. In the immediate vicinity of Badr, Rasulullah ﷺ and Abu Bakr Siddiq they scouted and in which they managed to locate a camp of the Quraysh. They found an old Bedouin there from whom they were able to get the exact location of the army of the Quraysh. In the evening of the same day, Rasulullah dispatched three Muhajirin leaders, Ali bin Abi Talib, Zubayr bin Awam, and Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu, to scout around for news about the enemy. Now they saw two men drawing water for the Meccan army. So they captured them and they interrogated them. So they admitted that they were water carriers for the Quraysh. But the answer did not please some of the Muslims. So they beat up these boys in order to extract from them an answer. They wanted to hear them saying that there was a caravan which was which was laden with wealth. So these two boys, when they realized that they were being beaten up, so they lied. Now Rasulullah, when he heard about this whole thing, was very angry. He never allowed people to torture and to beat up and so on. So he said, he said to them, when they told you the truth, you beat them up, and when they told you a lie, you released them. He said, what kind of sense is this? And then he talked to the two boys and he asked them some questions, and so they told him everything. They told him about the enemy, the number of soldiers, their exact location, and the names of some of the leaders who were with them. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam then turned to the Muslims and he said, listen, the Quraysh have sent to you their most precious lives. More inshallah in our next class. I want us to reflect on this and say, what are the lessons that we learn from this beautiful story of the seerah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyil kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin.